Is the New York Jets head coaching search going to be downright offensive, or is defense an option this time around yet again? I'm Glenn Norton with JetNation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. Joined again this week by my co-host Dylan Terman. We're going to go over a bunch of stuff. We're going to go over head coach candidates. We'll talk a little bit about some of the top performers against Seattle, some Senior Bowl invite or accepted invite names, and some thoughts on some comments from Aaron Rodgers earlier today. Dylan, how are we doing?
Doing well. I mean, this is exactly where we thought we'd be with 5 games left of football to play, talking about potential head coach candidates. So this is very frustrating, of course, but hey, I mean, we got, like I said, 5 games left. There's some film to analyze, some good things to take out of it, obviously some bad things to take out of it that have a lot to do with our future. But speaking of future, we have head coach candidates. We have draft prospects towards the end of the show, I'm sure. So the future is usually bright, and we like to look a little bit on the bright side as we get into the early part of December.
Yeah, it's to each his own. I see nothing but darkness for this franchise. I was thinking about not using light anymore when I do the show, just to add emphasis. Maybe
which makes sense that I'm so bright because I have a very
dim light, to like just so you can barely see my face, like a Blair Witch Project type thing. Just talk about how miserable the Jets are. It is what it is. They do what they do. What are they going to do with Dylan? Does it have to be? I know your thoughts on this, but share it with the audience. Does it have to be offense? There are a lot of people saying you can't go defense again. You've gone defense, 85 of the last 87 times or whatever it is. And ironically enough, the 2 worst coaches were on the offensive side of the ball. The 2 times they went offense, it got them Rich Kotite and Adam Gase. 2 worst coaches I've seen in my life as a Jets fan, which is saying something because this is a pathetic franchise that does an awful lot of losing. And those guys lost better than anybody I've ever seen. And again, it was the 2. Well, I guess early on as a fan, you had Walton, you had Coslet, Coslet with Boomer, that pairing. But in terms of, in the last 15, 20 years, it's been defense. Kotite sprinkled in. He's 30 years now. And of course, Adam Gase, who was a complete clown show. What are your thoughts? How important is it that it's offense? And what are some of the defensive names you'd be happy to bring along?
I don't know about offensive, but maybe offensive is how I would put that. I did a timelines research of just the. What's that?
Said it's a play on words.
No, of course. But I did a timelines research just to see the GM, head coach, quarterback timeline reset and where it has happened in my lifetime. So I go all the way back to 1995, like you said, Rich Kotite, which is 30 years ago. It's him and Adam Gase because I assumed Al Groh was a defensive coach. But I know everybody else after that is defensive in my lifetime. Herm, Mangini, Rex, Todd. Obviously, Gase was the only offensive, and then Saleh. So to say that it has to be offensive, we don't think that it has to be anything. I mean, I think it just has to be well thought out. And I've used the word unconventional before. I think sometimes you have to go unconventional. The word traditional means nothing to me anymore. Like, what does the traditional search look like? Because we've seen a traditional search fail. We've seen a traditional search work. We've seen untraditional searches work, and we've seen untraditional searches fail. So I don't think it's a matter of looking back on what specific path we take to get there. It's just what we do when we get there. So no, to me, I'm not constricting the search to offensive only. My top guys, 2 out of the 3 are offensive, but that doesn't mean that I would, throw out the only defensive guy in the top 3. If they all wanted the Jets, maybe I would take the defensive guy because I'm kind of leaning into it a little bit. So no, I wouldn't constrict the search in any way, shape, or form for the GM or head coach. So no, I don't think it has to be offensive.
Yeah, for me, it comes down to are you bringing in a rookie quarterback? If you're adding a veteran, I could live with defense a little more, but you can't fail again. Well, yeah, you can and probably will, but you should do everything you can to not fail again at developing a young quarterback. And I think the best way to do that is to bring in someone who has developed a young quarterback. Like there's a How about that? How about we look for someone who's done the thing we want them to do, and see if they can do it again, rather than go out and find another guy who's never done anything and assume he's going to figure it out as a Jet. This is like sort of this organization has become a place for players and coaches to come and prove that they're not any good. Some of them move on and they do better elsewhere. You know, we're seeing what's going on with Darnold. We just saw Geno this week. Might see Izzy Abanikanda soon. I don't know. I don't know that we will. I honestly have no idea what the Niners running back situation is. They're signing guys left and right to practice squad and active roster, and they might not know till kickoff who's going to be playing for them. But either way, Izzy Abanikanda is shipped out. But yeah, I don't think it has to be offense, but if it's going to be a rookie quarterback, then it kind of does. If it's going to be defense, you know, some of the names, of course, you mentioned Vrabel. Well, I don't hate the idea of Vrabel. It just feels like the situation that's likely to fail the quickest. And I think it would fall apart in a hurry with him and Woody. He's a very strong personality. I don't think he would put up with Woody calling and saying, "I need you to bench this guy or start that guy." I don't think that would last very long. Aaron Glenn, of course, that name's been thrown around, the former Jets corner, Texas A&M product. I think with what he's done in Detroit, with the fact he's been able to keep that defense, not just keep them afloat, but keep them playing at a very high level after losing arguably the best defensive player in the league.
They have a laundry list of injuries now, too.
Yeah, tons of injuries and haven't skipped a beat, I think. And, the fact he apparently, has stayed in touch with and sees Bill Parcells as a mentor in the coaching world. I think Aaron Glenn would be a guy that I would consider if I was going deep. Well, not think, I would. He would be my top choice. And then I've kind of warmed up to the idea of Brian Flores. I didn't love it because, again, the talk about how and I talked about this recently, not so much that he was hard on Tua, and I could be wrong. I should look it up, but I seem to remember him like sort of benching, playing, like really just screwing around in a way that I don't think is beneficial to any young quarterback. So I was really against it, but you give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he learned from it, and if he can get a good offensive guy in here with him, I would have no problem with that. Todd Monken is still my number one choice. Older guy, I get it, but he's a guy who has who's been successful at every level, every job, developing quarterbacks, running offenses. College head coach at Mizzou, where they or not Mizzou. I'm drawing a blank. Was it Mizzou?
No, it was. Southern Miss.
Southern, yeah, they're another two. We've talked about teams,
and he took them out of the basement. The colors, yeah.
So there's a few teams, man. The color schemes are so similar that I brain fart on it.
I think Southern Miss. I think Frank Gore Jr. That's all. That's all I think about.
Yeah, and they were a team that had won 2 or 3 games in the previous few years, and within 2 years he's got them playing over 500 football. And then you look at what he did in Tampa with Jameis Winston. Everywhere he's been, quarterbacks succeed. And Cap says, "What has Aaron Glenn done in Detroit?" Middling coordinator, whose GM has spent a ton of draft picks. I don't think I would call them middling. I think they're a very good unit. And I think one of the marks of a good coach is what we just talked about. If you lose a bunch of players, a bunch of your best players, and you don't miss a beat, like that's pretty damn impressive. So to me, Aaron Glenn, I thought it was a strong candidate a couple years ago, and he's only sort of enhanced his reputation in Detroit since then. And there's let's see, lost me on Flores. Again, Flores, look at what Minnesota's doing this year. Were the Dolphins that bad under Flores? I thought he got them like
no, he went 9 wins, 10 wins, 7 wins, and that was the year that the tanking report came out. Or it was 10 wins, 9 wins. 10 wins, 9 wins, I think.
I'm curious because I thought Flores had a winning record there.
Yeah, no, it was 10 wins and then 9 wins, but I think the 9-win season was the season that they asked him to tank.
Okay, so
he was over 500 both years.
Well, his first year 5-11, but then 10-6 and 9-8.
Okay, yeah, that's.
I think if you can go 10-6 and 9-8 when your owner is saying we're so bad that I want you to lose games on purpose, like that's pretty impressive.
And you absolutely hate your quarterback.
Yeah, you hate your quarterback. You're trying to run him
It's
over.
not a bad spot to be in.
Trying to
No.
run him over in the parking lot. You're still winning football games, and now you look at what they're doing in Minnesota
Yeah.
with him calling the defense. I think Flores did a pretty damn good job.
So
And I
Spielman,
thought so. I thought that was weird when John said that. I thought, like, did he have a bunch of losing seasons that I
no,
forgot?
just the
But
one.
no, just the
So
one in his
Spielman
season.
talked about putting these coaches into buckets and the GMs into buckets, and he talked
Yeah,
about first-time head coaches, offensive or defensive, and then retreads, offensive or defensive. Those are really the only 4 buckets we're coming from. I mean, yes, you can have a special teams coordinator, which I guess would be the 5th option, and there's a couple of them, honestly, that are out there that might be worth it. But when you actually break it down into the 4 categories, my top 3, and I'll just name one right now: Ben Johnson 1, Todd Monken 2, Mike Vrabel 3. Ben Johnson and Todd Monken are the top 2 of first-time head coaches for me. And then the drop-off is like Liam Cohen, Joe Brady. So that's a big
yeah,
drop-off, in my opinion. Then you have defensive retreads, Mike Vrabel, and then I think it's a slight drop-off to Brian Flores, and then a much bigger drop-off to Rex Ryan. So I don't know. I feel like the people in the comments saying all these guys are bad, it's like, what is the option? Because I don't know. I don't think Ben Johnson's coming here. Like you said, I don't think of all the things that he just said, it sounds like he wants the Jets to take a long, hard look in the mirror that they're just not willing to do for somebody like that. So maybe they prove us wrong. And until he says no, he'll be my top guy. But you have to look at like Monken, Vrabel, like you said, Glenn, Flores. I mean, Liam Cohen and Joe Brady would be first-time offensive minds, but I might put those guys above the defensive just because they're offensive. And like you said, with the rookie quarterback, I think that's a huge caveat because I've been of the, agenda, like, let's go get a rookie quarterback and sit him for at least 8 games behind whoever is our quarterback next year. And then we roll the dice. So then it would be enticing to have a Liam Cohen or a Joe Brady as our head coach for sure. But I do think it's a big drop off after like wherever you put the 3 of Johnson, Monken, and Vrabel, because I'm sure they're probably 2 of those guys are probably high on your list if Ben Johnson wants to come here, but you've already said Monken. But like, who after that do you like? Is like, I know you said
Johnson being an option.
No, I don't either.
Monken is a guy that teams should want, but I think his age will hurt him. So I don't think he'll have as many people coming after him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, in terms of options that I think are realistic, that's why Monken's and Monken might still be my one, to be honest, since he has been a head coach. But
if Ben Johnson isn't the one, which he's only the one until he says no to the Jets, it would be Monken, Vrabel, Liam Cohen for me as number 3. And Cap in the chat says Kingsbury, Monken, Cohen, Slowick. Kingsbury, I mean, I'm probably more optimistic on Kingsbury than Glenn would be. Monken,
I'd be all right with Kingsbury.
You would be okay? Okay, that's surprising. Yeah. Actually, I feel like I maybe I'm misremembering, or maybe it was
I think in the past I may not have been a fan, but now he's sort of in that bucket. I've talked about this. I like coaches who sort of have potential, but if they fail and get a year or 2 away from being a head coach to sort of work on what they needed to do.
Yeah.
John. But that's losing record, but that's.
And what are your thoughts on Bobby
one losing season? Like he took over a bad team and didn't win a bunch of games. So, a lot of what was Bill Belichick before he won anything? What Dick Vermeil never won a Super Bowl, and then he comes back and wins a Super Bowl. Like it's I'm not going over a 3-year sample for a guy who had one really bad year in his first year, because those first years tend to be rough.
What do you think about Bobby Slowick? That was the 4th name Cap put in the chat. Houston offensive coordinator, good for 1 year with CJ Stroud, kind of taking a dip this year, but still one of the hot names, I guess, part of that Shanahan tree.
That's the thing. Another Shanahan guy. Like, it's hard to be against that. You just expect them to be living in the modern era, which the Jets never seem to have a guy.
And that's why Cohen is my 3rd. If Ben Johnson's off the list, Cohen is my 3rd, because it's not the Shanahan, but it's the McVay, which is more not so much 2 back under center. It's more 3 backs, maybe a little under center, more spread out a little bit. So, excuse me. But I think the Shanahan or McVay scheme would obviously be my preferred based on, the 2021 cycle. At least I was a big LaFleur guy. Then Cap comes in with Wes Phillips. I don't even know what he's doing. Is he even in coaching right now? I mean, I think that's a weird name.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm
And
not
Matt
sure. And
Nagy
Matt
over any
Nagy,
defensive coach? I don't know about that either.
yeah.
Not a fan of Matt Nagy at
I mean,
all.
Matt Nagy fits my whole, have some time away, but he was so bad in Chicago.
Yeah, what was
Like, what was his record? Did
I
he
was gonna
have a
say,
winning record?
John, you said a winning record, and you say Matt Nagy. I'm
Yeah,
confused.
I didn't
Did
realize
Matt
Matt
Nagy
Nagy
have
had a
some?
winning record. I'm gonna look that up right now.
Yeah, did he have some
I thought he
crazy
had a
good?
losing record.
He was 34 and 31. I'll give it to him.
Well, there you go. There's a winner.
Oh boy, AP Coach of the Year.
Not
Team
sure
went
why
12 and
teams aren't
4.
banging down his door.
Okay. So you say no to Brian
Isn't he
Flores,
the
who went?
anointed successor in KC?
What's that?
I thought he was like sort of anointed as like he's going to be the.
Yeah, he took over for Bieniemy after Bieniemy left. I think he just kind
Yeah,
of like
but I
shuffled
thought
in
that
after
was
he
why.
got
I
fired.
thought they let Bieniemy go because Nagy was
So-
going to take over.
So with Flores, who went 5-11 in his first year, where he has the least amount of roster, percentage, we'll say, based on
Right.
his guys, he goes 5-11, 10-6, and then 9-8 or whatever it is. Whatever 5 wins,
Right.
10 wins, 9 wins. But then Matt Nagy goes 12 wins, 8 wins twice, and then 6 wins. Has a 3-game plus percentage in the win column, but I don't know, man. I think what Flores did was he put his imprint on the team and turned it around and made it double-digit winner from 5 wins instead of kind of tanking the record with his hands all over the team. So I don't know. 12, yeah, he won 12 games with Trubisky. Sure, I don't know. Maybe I don't remember the Matt Nagy regime as well as he did, but I would be completely out on that, and I would take a lot of defensive coaches ahead of him, including.
And I actually liked.
All right, Rex Ryan or Matt Nagy. I'm asking you.
What's
Glenn.
that?
I'm asking you, Rex Ryan or Matt Nagy.
Wow.
See? Okay, so that's where we think of Matt Nagy. He's down there, but like we don't know how far.
Yeah, he's but he's another guy who's going to look like a genius because Patrick Mahomes is his quarterback, right? Like,
sure.
Look
But Eric Bieniemy just got fired in UCLA
for having the 117th ranked offense in college football. 117th, and people were yelling at us that he was a genius. And
in your Power 5 program,
something's wrong here. There's
your
something
Power 5 program.
117th in college football. That's insane.
There might be 70 Power 5 schools.
Yeah.
There's 40 group of 5 schools less than you or better than you. That's
absolutely. Yeah, John, we're splitting hairs here. I mean,
Sure.
They're within a couple of games of each other. Nagy had an extra year, John.
He did. Right?
Yeah. Nagy had 4 years, and Flores had 3. Flores was trending in the right direction, winning more games than he lost initially. Nagy had 1 good year and then collapsed. So you go from 12 to 8 to 8 to 6. That's just time exposing you as a bad coach. Flores, meanwhile, was trending from a losing record to 2 consecutive winning seasons, and it right now is one of the best defenses in the NFL. So we'll see what happens there.
What are your thoughts on the first-time offensive guys? Like, obviously, we know Monken, but he's kind of like out of the realm because he's a little bit older, more experienced. But like the Liam Cohens, the Joe Brady's, I have the other list. The Bobbies. I mean, we just talked a little bit about Slowick, but
Cohen, I'm not as familiar with. Brady,
Cohen, you said?
Yeah, Cohen, I'm not that familiar with. Brady. Mm-hmm. Can we trade for Joe Burrow? That'd be a nice little reunion.
That would be fun.
Joe Burrow.
Right, so that brings me to my next part. If there's any offensive coaches that get fired or potentially fired, like Kevin Stefanski or Zach Taylor, I think
people already said Stefanski's safe.
Oh, did he? Okay. Well, that's good to know because
a couple weeks ago, and someone in the chat said Cleveland said he was safe.
Okay.
And I Googled it, and like that day, like a few hours earlier, Cleveland said he's safe.
That's good, though, because he's been pushing the Deshaun gives us the best chance to win, which is probably coming from ownership. And
he's not.
You can't fire the guy who's standing out front.
Taking his marching orders and saying what he's told.
Yeah, so that's good. But Zach Taylor, I mean, if he gets fired in Cincinnati, or if like they're talking about firing him in Cincinnati, are you willing to trade? I'm not saying a first-round pick for Zach Taylor, but like a second or a third-round pick for Zach Taylor?
No, I'm not. There are enough coaches who I'm hiring, and I'm not giving up draft picks.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's if Todd Monken's out there, I'm not giving up a draft pick for someone else's failed coach.
Sure.
I'm not. That's unless you're talking about Andy Reid. I'm not trading for a head
Which
coach.
I forget who reported it, but they said that Andy Reid had multiple team planes ready to pick him up in Philadelphia when he was fired.
I don't doubt that one bit.
No, I don't. Like that's how you know. Like that's how you know.
Yeah,
Zach Robinson is
it's
another
like
name. Sorry.
I was gonna say, as an owner, how do you not know you screwed up? But to be fair, he was with Philly for a long time.
It
Like
was
they were
it was
like,
getting stale. It was getting
yeah,
very stale. The
and it worked.
whole Yeah, I mean, he got them so far, couldn't get over the hump, and then they both kind of parted ways, and then eventually they both got over the hump. So it was good for both of them, I guess, in a sense.
What about
Cap
Arthur
said
Smith? I've heard Rich Samini mentioned his name the other day.
so. Yeah, Rich Samini was the Dark Smith candidate or Dark Horse candidate, Dark Horse candidate for the job, and I don't know why they would interview him for the job. If I mean, I guess they were trying to hire him as the babysitter to Hackett, so I guess they were interested in him. But why would he want to leave Pittsburgh? Also, I feel like he's doing a good job there finally, and like making good use of the weapons after
Like to be a head coach, like go from OC to head coach.
No, I get that. I get that. It's totally an upgrade, but I wouldn't be mad. No, but I don't think I'd love it. I didn't love it when he was interviewed. What was that? 2019 or was it 2021? He was interviewed.
We were talking earlier about weird coaches. He was a little weird in Atlanta, like the way he
Yeah.
did things.
Well, he wasn't using Pitts and
Yeah,
Bijan the right way.
yeah,
He was
the Bijan thing, and he was really cocky about it. Like,
Yeah. Now they seem to be clicking on all cylinders, but again, that's also a product of Mike Tomlin
I was
and
gonna
his
say,
environment.
Tomlin and
I know Chris Schubert's not a Hard Knocks guy, but I know you dabble in Hard Knocks. Have you watched the first episode of the AFC North?
no, I haven't.
Okay, the way Tomlin coaches compared to the rest of the four, it's different. I'll say that. Obviously, Harbaugh's a great coach. Zach Taylor's a good coach.
Yeah.
Stefanski is a good coach, but like Tomlin is just different, and it shows in his meetings and his interactions with the players. So I'm not surprised when even coaches go there and find success and have better, trajectories.
All right. Speaking of success and trajectories, let's talk a little bit about some top performers from this past weekend's loss. We can just say game; they're all losses. Against the Seattle Seahawks for Gang Green. Their last two first-round picks this year is Olu Fashanu, and of course Will McDonald. And I said before the game, Will McDonald hasn't had a sack in 4 weeks. If the Jets are going to have any chance in this game, and I singled him out because he's the guy who's most likely to break out and pressure and hit and sack the quarterback, and he did. Got himself a couple of sacks. Olu Fashanu, 42 pass block reps, no sacks, no pressures. Pitched himself a shutout. Couple of really good young players who are hitting and actually, how about a shout out, by the way? I did a few shows last week. I think it was when we did our joint show, Dylan, that I said one of my biggest hopes during the bye was that Sauce would get his act together, hone his craft. Best game of the year as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
Sauce Gardner. And really not even a close second. I thought he was, he gave up the 136-yard reception. Other than that, he was fantastic.
And it was still great technique on that play, but
yeah, and that's the thing. He was right there. Yeah. Garrett didn't do a ton, but he didn't have a lot of targets. But in terms of like these young guys, there's been some concern with the drop off because Garrett hasn't had the year we hoped. Sauce has been really, really bad at times, but looks like he may have taken everyone talks about how Rodgers finishes, and we'll touch on that later. I've been really concerned with how Sauce finishes this season. And that was why I said I hope the bye would be the turning point. And really big game for him. So thoughts on the three of the top. I don't know who PFF. I know Sauce had the top grade on defense. Joe Tipman had the top grade on offense. I don't know how the other guys grade out. I forget. But I know just from watching the game, I know Fashanu played really well. We know Will McDonald played really well. What are some of your thoughts on these young guys playing well as the season starts to wind down?
Yeah, immediately I wrote down a bunch of names like fresh coming out of the game. I think I was listening to your post game reaction stream, and I was just writing down names of guys that I like remembered doing well in the game. And I get to the bottom of the list, and they're all foundational pieces of this team. They're not like older guys that aren't going to necessarily be here next year, or might not be here for the next time we're competitive for the people that think we're not going to be competitive for 3-4 years. But you get to the list and it's like Quincy and Quinnen both had great games. Sauce, like you said, the biggest bounce back game of the season. Braylon had a good game. Isaiah Davis got a touchdown. Olu, Will McDonald. So your first round picks are hitting. I had Garrett. He had a good game. He just didn't catch the ball because, Rodgers couldn't hit him, but he was getting open. So it wasn't a matter of he looked bad. He looked good. He just didn't get
That's why
exactly. He didn't get highlighted when he was supposed to. So he had a great game. So these are all foundational pieces. And you go back to our show last week where we talked about who should stay and who should go. And I mean, outside of us keeping me keeping Rodgers and Devontae, you keeping Devontae, I mean, we had over 30 players on that list, and all those guys were on there. And now they're contributing, and you're seeing down the stretch, we got 6, 5, 4, 3, however many games left you have. You got to play hard, and you got to show what you got for this team because you might not be safe, even if you are a foundational piece or considered a foundational piece. When the new GMs come in there, they are just like, I don't owe you shit. I owe you no loyalty. Thank you for your time. See you later. We're cutting you. We'll save $3 million on the cap, and we'll eat $4 million in debt, and you can kick rocks. That's basically what they do. So for these guys to play well, it's encouraging. I'll just say that. It's just encouraging, even though it was a loss, and it was a historic loss in a way that nobody, only the Jets could have done in this season where they've lost in historic fashion 3 times. I'm tired of the Rich Cimini tweet on Tuesday, and it's not a shot at Rich. This is, Rich just doing good work and the research team at ESPN, but finding the ways where it's like score 250, a special teams touchdown, get into a fight where your head coach choke slams the other one, and you still lose the game by 2 scores. And it's like, what the hell, Jets? Like, how do you do this? So I'm tired of those tweets, but it is nice and encouraging to see some of these young guys balling out a little bit down the stretch.
Yeah, Cap clearly not happy with the Jets. 1, he wants Sauce traded, and 2, he says Quinnen only plays well when he's not playing for anything but stats. I'm not sure what that means. Normally people say guys are only playing for money. If he's only playing for stats, like that's when you play well, you get stats. That's just kind of how that works. And Quinnen, since that Pittsburgh, like the Jets were still technically in it when he started turning things around and playing much better this season. I felt like the Pittsburgh game was Quinnen's turning point, and he's been very good since then. The stats 100%. Aren't always there, but I don't get caught up in the fantasy football stuff. Like there's things guys like him can do that don't show up in the box score. He's playing at a very high level, almost always does. Had a slow start to the season, but playing really well now. Mm-hmm. I want to highlight this from Jay Quest. Mm-hmm. Head coach has to be a leader, plain and simple. The reason I highlight that is because on my drive home tonight, I was listening to my favorite NFL draft podcast with the first pick, which is hosted by Ryan Wilson and Rick Spielman, who is on the committee that is helping the Jets find a new coach. And they were talking about things that you need, things you're looking for in a head coach. And Spielman really seemed to be hammering home the need, especially with today's players, the way the game has changed so much. You need a guy who's a great communicator, who's great at motivating young guys, keeping them motivated, and talked about Mike Tomlin and how you see how, he's, a million years in a row now without a losing season. And he's a guy who manages to keep his young players motivated. And that was a big emphasis for Spielman was if you're going to hire a coach, find a guy who can keep his players motivated.
And I think that goes for me. That's why I think I push Vrabel up my list because I think he is a leader. And I understand
he was the one I thought of when Spielman was saying that. I was like, I've seen some of those, mic'd up and behind the scenes things with Vrabel. Yeah. And I'm like, he's that guy.
And he's a very smart football mind. Like I think people lose that with him because he kind of just looks like a meathead linebacker. Like we have a linebacker as head coach right now. Vrabel is light years ahead of Jeff Ulbrich in terms of football intelligence. There's the clip of him going around right now of him doing the delay of games with Bill Belichick and Bill Belichick getting heated on the sideline, even though he did that to Adam Gase earlier in the season. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember that.
So he knows like the little ins and outs and like that's the stuff the Jets need, the little like nuances of the game. But I think he is a leader too. And I mean, I get your point about the meddling with the owner and Woody and this and that, but like his first year in Tennessee, he was in a win and in situation. Week 17, the team lost. All right. The next 3 years, he goes to the playoffs, loses the championship game, loses the wild card, and then he's a one and done in the divisional. But he's got 9 wins, 11 wins, 12 wins, and then it dropped off a lot. And I think this is after the AJ Brown trade, and he started getting, frustrated with what was going on personnel wise. 7 wins and then 6 wins. So I still think he could be, the guy that comes in and brings in a good offensive coach and is a leader of men, plain and simple, like Jay Quest is saying. So that's kind of why I bump him up my list the most. But other than that, because who else on this list that we've named, who just screams leader to you on this list? I don't know if Todd Monken does, even though I like him the most. It's I don't feel that way about any. Maybe Aaron Glenn or Brian Flores, but again, these guys are defensive minds that are hard nosed, I guess, So lunch pail kind of guys, but I don't know if that's necessarily a good leader or a bad leader. So it's hard to tell.
Yeah. John says Rodgers has to go, not a true leader. Wanted to bring this up. I'm not sure if you saw the quote from Rodgers today, basically saying he doesn't think the next 5 games are critical to him because
it's ridiculous.
Because the Jets should know what he brings.
Yeah.
Well, they know what you brought, but that was in Green Bay. But what you bring here hasn't been anywhere close to that. So I thought I get there's ego and pride and all that stuff. I didn't think that was a great comment. Based on the way he's played, it's almost like he is resting on his laurels. I sucked this year, but look how good I used to be. I don't have to prove anything,
right?
Nothing. And I'm sure if you look hard enough, you'll find an interview where he says something along the lines of, "You got to prove yourself every day in this league," because you do, and every day might be a bit of it. That's a slight exaggeration. You're allowed to have a bad day when you're a first ballot Hall of Famer. You're allowed to have a bad month or two.
Mm-hmm.
But it's now extended beyond that. Now you do have to prove yourself, Aaron. I'm sorry. I love the old highlights, and you're gonna, I don't know what the Hall of Fame speech is gonna look like. That's gonna be wild. But yeah, you're not doing what you used to do, and you haven't done it for a couple of years now. So whether you like it or not, whether you feel it's right or not, he kind of does have to prove himself.
Yeah. The term I used on Buffalo Jet Fans pod this past Monday was ego death. I think Rodgers has to, succumb to some kind of ego death, whether it's, saying, hey, I'm going to, stop having my influence on the offense. I'm just going to run what you call, coach. I'm just going to do the plays because we saw the first 15 that were scripted for the Jets against the Seahawks looked pretty good. They ended up in 2 scoring drives in the first 3 drives that they had the ball. So if he says, hey, I'm going to put my ego aside and I'm going to run the offense, or, hey, I'm going to put my ego aside and not say we don't need distractions and then come out with this enigma documentary. And it's little things like that just, it doesn't scream you're a leader. And it's unfortunate because everything that he does, other than the media stuff, feels like a leader. And he doesn't take full accountability with the media, which sucks. It's oh yeah, the wind was a little inconsistent. Dude, it's a 5-yard pass. The wind is not affecting it that much. You're not throwing a Hail Mary, you've done that. You've thrown Hail Marys in MetLife before when it was snowing against the Giants. So don't say that the wind in MetLife affected your 5-yard fade route. I think Leonard Williams explained it the best as far as his chucking and ducking, but no, it's not leader behavior.
Play, though, he wasn't under any pressure, was he?
I haven't gone back to see, but I think he said the Garrett play, they got close to him.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I mean the Leonard Williams INT. I assume that's what Leonard Williams is talking about.
No. He said on the Garrett throw, the pass rush got close to him and he chucked it and ducked it, and that's why it was a wild throw. The pick six, no, the pick six is strictly the Seahawks watch film. They know our tendencies on 3rd down. Especially when we come out in shotgun with 3 to the right, we run in breakers. Everybody freaking knows it. And Rodgers doesn't. I don't want to say he doesn't because he still does at times, but he didn't have any post-snap processing. He said, hey, I'm on 3rd down. I know I got in breakers. They brought a bunch of people up to the line of scrimmage on defense. I know I have the in breaker behind him. Nobody's going to drop out. But like the Vikings, somebody dropped out. And they got him. It's the exact same play. You got lazy, and that's what happens. You make a bad play, and then you get lazy. You change the whole course of the game.
Yeah,
Don't blame the
John
wind.
McLaughlin says, "What about Bill Cowher? That dude hasn't coached in like 30 years."
I was on that train in 2021, just like as like a, oh my gosh, hypothetical dart throw, because we needed somebody who's going to turn this, be a hard ass, and I didn't, there was no real substance to it, and I didn't think anything about it after that. So no.
Another point I want to bring up here from Jay Quest, because I can't remember if I mentioned this or not, Dylan. I talked recently about how there is no way in hell Aaron Rodgers comes back because of the fact that he's carries a potential $63 million cap hit after next year. But now, as I'm saying it, I think I may have mentioned it. I think I kind of, as an aside, kind of said unless he takes a huge pay cut, which I don't know if he would, because he's already taken one huge pay cut. But the thing is, if he truly wants to play, I keep saying it. The only one team wanted him 2 years ago, pre-Achilles, pre-playing the worst football of his career. Like, how many teams are going to want him now? I mean, there might be some teams willing to bring him in for a look, willing to let him compete for a starting job. If the Jets are one of those teams, maybe under those conditions, maybe he is back. But he is certainly not back with his current contract.
I mean, how do you even bring Rodgers in if you're the Jets or another team as a competing for starting role job? Just the way he's covered as a quarterback, it's not the same. It's not like Andy Dalton in Carolina or whatever, where if he comes in the game, it is what it is. No, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't win the competition to the rookie quarterback, hypothetically, let's just play the game. We have Cam Ward. We're in August. We brought Rodgers back. They're competing for the job. Cam Ward wins the job. How many games until Jets fans say, oh, but Aaron Rodgers is on the bench, or the media goes, oh, hey, Aaron Rodgers is on the bench, or coaches start going, hey, we got a Hall of Famer on the bench. It's going to take 2 games of Cam Ward or any quarterback, truthfully. So like you can't do the competing for a starting. He's either going to be your starter or he's not. And that's what makes it even harder. Like what are the options? You retire or you play for the Jets, I think are his options.
And having just said what I said, just as those words left my face, I realized he's already taken the $35 million pay cut. The $49 million he would get after this year is guaranteed. Why in the world would he take another enormous pay cut to compete for a job? Even if you want to say he loves the game, he loves the history, he wants, his legacy and all that means a lot to him. Does it mean another $30 million pay cut and be down $65 million?
Especially after a 6-game audition for his job in the first place, he's going to say, "Oh, you guys chose me, and now I have to give you back money." I don't think so.
Yeah. So, like I said, literally as I was finishing that sentence, my brain was like, "Why would he take a huge pay cut when he's guaranteed $49 million?" If he
that would be the ultimate. Like I said, that would probably be part of the ego death. It's like, hey, I know I didn't play well here. I promised the Jets 2 seasons of me playing quarterback, not just me 2 seasons as the Jets quarterback in name. Like I gave them 2 seasons. We've already seen him talk about he wants to play all 17 this season because after an Achilles, he's like, my goal was to play all 17. I don't think he meant play them as poorly as he has, but he wanted to play all 17. So if he can come back next year in any capacity and play a full season, I think it's a credit to him. But at the same time, yeah, there's got to be like a 15 million plus pay cut to even probably be considered. And like I said, after a 5-game, 6-game audition as a first ballot Hall of Famer, 4-time MVP, who's going to say, hey, yeah, Woody, let me just be real polite to you. So I don't see it.
Yeah. I apologize to everyone for all the yawning too. And you too, Dylan. You're not boring.
Oh, it's okay. We know what time it is over there. It's way past midnight, right? It's like 1:30. We might have lost him now. We lost his camera before, but now I think we might have fully lost Glenn. Let's remove him from the screen. All right. So what do we got? Cap in the chat says Steelers would let Wilson walk when they inevitably lose in round 1. I don't know if you're saying that the Steelers would want Rodgers or if we would want Russell Wilson, but I don't know if like the storylines either way are pretty good. Maybe Rodgers to Pittsburgh would be better, but I don't see Russell Wilson coming to the Jets. I mean, maybe after a resurgence career, but I think it would probably be in everybody's best interest in Pittsburgh to just stay put and run it back next year, because I mean the Steelers are a powerhouse right now in the AFC North, and they don't. Oh, okay, you were talking Steelers and Rodgers. Yeah, I guess if they moved on from Russ, maybe you would bring in a Rodgers because you need a bridge guy. I jokingly said the Jets should bring in Fields, but that's more tongue in cheek because I was a Fields guy in the draft. But yeah, I guess like that would be an option if they did move on from Russ, that Rodgers could play. I do think Rodgers would have some teams if he did, leave the Jets and want to play. And I mean, we saw this a little bit with the Packers. He had that little chip on his shoulder when he was traded to the Jets, like the Packers didn't want me. And I think we're hearing a little bit of that in his media availability this week. We're hearing more of the, oh, well, if they don't want me back, that's fine. Basically I want to play, but if they don't want me back, it's fine. And that's the fire lighting up underneath Aaron Rodgers' ass, that if he is playing next year, he will be trying to prove a point. Obviously, we don't know what it will look like, but there's some people that say, hey, I don't care. As long as Aaron Rodgers is not playing for the Jets, I don't care if he continues to, further his career in the NFL. I'm a fan of, obviously, Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. I don't want to have to pick between both. So if Aaron Rodgers is going to create, all these negative, storylines around the team, I would rather just move on from Rodgers, still be a fan of the team. And then if Rodgers does good somewhere else that isn't like in the division or in the conference that's, a competitor to us, then yeah, I would root for Rodgers going forward. So Steelers would probably fit in that mold of if Rodgers went there, I'm not rooting for him. I can't root for the Steelers, especially after 2004. They've been the thorn in my side ever since I was a kid, watching that playoff game, watching all of Doug Bryan's missed field goals. So no, Rodgers to the Steelers, not a fan, but I could see it happening. I don't see Glennon backstage, so it looks like he's probably doing a hard reset of his entire setup. So we'll give him a couple more minutes, see if a couple more comments roll in. I appreciate everybody's support. Got about 200 people, it looks like, in the chat, so we appreciate everybody tuning in. I know football is going on. Right now, the Lions are beating the Packers. That's not much of a surprise. Let's see, any other chats we got here? Cap says, young offensive head coach and a veteran DC. That's how you build it. Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. Some of the young names I like, I've already mentioned, Liam Cohen, Joe Brady. I think it's hard to definitively get behind any candidate at this point in the process. One, because we don't know how long it's going to take for these playoff coaches to become available. They could go all the way to the Super Bowl, and teams don't necessarily want to wait that long to get their guy in the building. As the schedule gets longer for the NFL, as it is, the Senior Bowl happens before the Super Bowl based on the scheduling. So teams, they want to have their coaches, established sooner rather than later. With that being said, as we know more about the candidates and who they want to bring in as their potential staff members, I think that makes the process easier to figure out. Like Mike Vrabel, I can, kind of picture an offensive and defensive coordinator candidate. Trevor Sikkema of the NFL Stock Exchange floated out that Brian Hartline, if fired from Ohio State, Vrabel has ties to Ohio State. Maybe he brings in a Brian Hartline as his OC. And then as a defensive coordinator, you could bring in the Giants' current DC, Shane Bowen. I don't know if that coaching staff, stays intact in New York, so you can bring him across, town to the Jets, and he could be the DC for Vrabel, and he has ties to him from the 2018 Titans staff when Vrabel first took over for Mike Mularkey in Tennessee. He brought in Shane Bowen as his outside linebackers coach. I don't know a ton about Bowen and his, successes in the league or failures even. So it's just, like I said, I can picture a staff around him, so it's easier to figure out how much I like a candidate. But if you're telling me Liam Cohen or Joe Brady is bringing in a top defensive guy as well, like a Lou Anarumo, if Lou Anarumo got fired from Cincinnati and Liam Cohen, the Tampa Bay OC, comes over and he's like, yeah, I want Lou Anarumo, and you have Liam Cohen and Lou, yeah, I would get 100% down for that. It's kind of the inverse of the Saleh LaFleur. you just, you're flipping the roles, so to speak. Lou Anarumo's still a top defensive mind. Their talent has just been riddled in Cincinnati, and they really have not been playing up to their standard, up to their talent, I don't believe. And then obviously Liam Cohen, what he's doing with Baker Mayfield, I think is really, really good for his resume. He was good in Kentucky, and now he's a McVay guy under the McVay tree from his time in LA. So those are the guys that I would like. So yeah, I agree, Cap. If you could bring in a young offensive guy with the veteran DC, I would be cool with that. Like I said, I'm pretty much open to anything at this point. We've seen it all work. We've seen it all fail around the league. With the Jets, we've just seen it all fail. So like, it doesn't really matter what the process is. I think once you put the names into the slots, then you can really start analyzing and reacting more. But right now, it's just a bunch of names that we don't even know if they're going to be interested in. Because like I said, the Browns, they're not looking like they're going to be available, or they're not going to the playoffs, obviously. So they'll be available for interviews sooner than if Tampa Bay wins the division and they go into the playoffs. Liam Cohen could not be available for an interview for a couple weeks, or the Ravens with Todd Monken, or the Lions with Ben Johnson, or Joe Brady and the Bills. So it all depends. Cap says you get Cohen, you get Casey Rogers. I'm pretty sure Casey Rogers was already on the Jets staff a couple years ago with Bulls. Hey, it fits your veteran DC mold, right? I guess, but I don't think that would be necessarily inspiring. Although, not the worst thing in the world. I think if you said Cohen and Casey Rogers versus Aaron Glenn and like some crappy offensive coach, then yeah, like I'm probably taking Cohen and Rogers. So it's a tough call, but it's not very inspiring. I understand the ties to to Tampa Bay, excuse me. But that's what I mean is like, who are the guys attached to the head coach candidates? Like if Monken can bring in a DC, sure, why not? Like those are the types of things that move the needle. If we got Ron Rivera, I mean, maybe that's one of those ones. It's like he's been a head coach. He's kind of been the whole thing over in Washington and in Carolina even. So I guess you have a chance. I don't know if I love that for the prospects of the defense. I think you kind of need a guy who's going to, I'm not going to say he's not going to get the most out of the defense, but I don't know if that necessarily moves the needle for me. Glenn said his Wi-Fi dropped. He's trying to reconnect. So we'll see if he can get back in here. We're going on almost 50 minutes anyway, so we'll give him about 5 more minutes and then we'll start wrapping it up. But yeah, as the search goes on, we'll see what happens. Like I said, we still got 5 games left of this dysfunction, which is Jets football. Don't even know if you could call it football at this point because I watch teams like, the Packers and the Lions who are on TV now, or the Bills, and whatever they're playing, it's just not the same as what we're playing. And I would like ours to look like theirs for once. And that's the easiest way to put it. It's frustrating. Yeah, there's not much more to say other than it's frustrating. Looks like we got Glenn back in the backstage. You're good? We got you?
Yeah, just my Wi-Fi just died. I was in the middle of how tired I was. I thought, oh man.
Sounds like the Jets in the third quarter just dying.
A nap. But yeah, just died. I had to restart the router, and here I am.
No
Where
problem.
Are we?
I was just going over like young OC turned head coach with the veteran defensive coordinator in hand, and I was going over some names. Cap was giving us some scenarios like Liam Cohen, Casey Rogers, Todd Monken, Ron Rivera, Aaron Glenn, Mark Brunell, Flores, McCown. Yeah, like those aren't terrible. Like none of those names
mind
are
McCown.
like no, I don't think any of those names
a veteran
deter
who's
me.
Played in 55 different systems.
No.
And I mean, there's nothing you're going to throw at him that he doesn't know, that he hasn't seen. There's no idea. I actually like the idea of McCown working with Monken. Even though Monken's going to be your primary play caller, I think McCown would be a great person or Monken would be a great person for McCown to learn from and maybe sort of groom him.
Is McCown the OC in Minnesota?
I believe so. No.
Or is he just the quarterback's coach? Because if he's just the quarterback's coach, then that's an upgrade. Even if he's not he's the quarterback's coach. So even if he's not a play calling OC, that is still an upgrade over quarterback's coach. So they could, I don't know if they can't deny, they can only deny lateral.
Right.
So they couldn't, if we wanted to hire him, they would at least have to give us an interview.
Yeah.
If you got Monken in to call plays and then you had McCown, I would like
Someone did make a point earlier, though, that was a fair one about Flores that I mentioned earlier in the week but forgot tonight. He did have like 4 OCs in 1 year, which was insane.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't know if it was all in 1 year, but in a very short time frame.
Sure.
He had. I remember it being sort of a running joke at the time that he like one after the other, and some of them were in quick succession. Mm-hmm. So that piece is a little bit concerning.
Right.
But not the end of the world if he can get a good guy in here. Maybe he brings McCown because they're working together in Minnesota now.
Right. That's what Flores was saying. Yep. How do you feel about Monken and Ron Rivera as defensive coordinator?
Ron Rivera?
That's what I said.
I don't know. Things went.
I don't think he gets the most out of the defense. He's a good coach, like in terms of like CEO style, but I don't think he's a good get the most out of the talent on the defense right now.
Yeah. And that was a point I made about Rex recently, is that, I never, and this isn't saying Rex should come back, but I think the best thing you could say about Rex, at least me personally, there was never a team that Rex coached that after the year, it's the opposite of this year. I never saw a Rex team where I was like, oh, that team could have been so much better. Like you felt like he got the most out of it. To me, that's, and I think we've talked about this. I mentioned it recently. To me, that's the mark of a good coach. And the example I always use is Felipe Alou. Different sport, same concept. When I was a kid and he was the manager of the Expos, they always had like the lowest payroll in baseball. They had some great young stars, but before they were great, they had Pedro, they had Randy Johnson, they had John Wetland, like all these guys before they were what they eventually became. But every year with the Expos, you felt like he got the most out of that team. They could be in last place, but he got the most out of them. Whereas some coaches, you hand them an all-star team or a very good team, and they flop. And it's like, oh, well, this coach had a better record. Right, but this guy's team had 12-win talent. This guy's team had 8-win talent. He won 8 games. They both won 8 games, but one guy, let's be honest, should have won 12.
Right.
So with Rex, I never got the feeling like, oh, they would have been so much better if they had a different coach.
That'd be like if the Commanders and the Cowboys ended with the same record this year.
Right.
You'd look at that and you'd be like, wow, the Commanders completely over-expected, and then the Cowboys like underperformed completely. So yeah. And I'll say this about Rex. He went on an interview with Ryan Clark and Channing Crowder, the Pivot podcast, and he said the things that he would do differently was he would rely more on his staff. And I think that is the only thing that would get me interested in bringing Rex back, is if we knew ahead of time who his staff was going to be.
That's
because he's put together good staffs like back in 2008 in the playoff years. We had good, like a lot of those guys went on to be pretty predominant, even head coaches, right? A lot of that staff, like we had Anthony Lynn, we had Mike Pettin.
Lynn, but they also had Sperano.
We had Callahan.
Pettin kind of failed everywhere he went after that.
Yeah, but we had Bill Callahan, right? And we had a couple good defense.
But Callahan was sort of already established as a
guy. So he said he would rely on his more on his staff, and he said if you want to be good, lean on yourself. If you want to be great, lean on yourself and others. And like I said, I think that's probably the only thing he could ever do to, get me to even consider it for the Jets, because let's be real, nobody else is offering Rex a job or even an interview. So like, why are we doing this? Why are we bidding against ourselves for somebody who's outdated in the league? But I want to bring up this point that Cap brings up again. Flores brings McCown, and if McCown is successful, he leaves. And now what do you do with your quarterback? First of all, you're having success. So if your guy leaves, you're having success. I don't think
no matter who you bring in.
I think that's always going to be the case, unless obviously it's the head coach himself. But most staffs, and I know this didn't happen under Saleh, they have a succession plan. And I think it was supposed to be Rob Calabrese after LaFleur. I really think that was going to be their succession plan. And it never worked. It crumbled. And obviously, we don't know Knapp's position in the team, but like it all crumbled and it never worked. The pipeline never came to fruition. But like We can't have this mindset here where it's like, we can't hire this guy because if he's too good,
He might be good. That's
who
like
cares? If he's good, he's good. And if we win
I've
9,
seen
10
people
games,
say, if you draft this guy, if you draft this corner, we already have another All-Pro corner, and then you're gonna have to pay 2 guys.
Yeah.
Now we don't want to draft guys because they might be good.
The one thing I agree with
what's the
Saleh is
plan
he
here?
said he wanted to make it as hard as he possibly could for Joe Douglas to do his job in terms of having to pay players.
Yeah.
That's the thing that you should want to do as a coach. Coach them up to the point where they deserve the max contract, and they're arguing upstairs with the GM and holding out and going to Roscoe's Diner and doing the whole bit. Like, that's good coaching. So, like, I don't care how you get it, and I don't care if it leaves in 3 years because we had 3 good seasons.
Yeah.
You would just hope that they have the pipeline in place this time. But we never even got to the step 1 of getting the good coach, to step 2, lose the good coach, to step 3, find the pipeline coach. You know what I'm saying?
I beg for the day when other teams want to hire Jets coordinators because they're so good.
I pray. Like, like, what a time to be alive. Like, and that's the problem is, like, we cried the second we hired LaFleur because we're like, oh, he's gone in 2 years. Well,
Yep.
guess what? Yeah, he was gone in 2 years, but
He certainly
not
was.
the way you thought. Exactly.
No.
So. And
Not
I
at
thought
all.
about that. Like, wouldn't that be big brained if, like, Vrabel sat down with Woody and he's like, all right, I want this job. I like the OC, or the GM you just picked, but my OC's got to be Mike. I got to bring Mike back. And Woody's like, nah, fuck you, man. I'm not doing it. So big brain, but that'd
Hits
be
him over
funny.
the head with the sauce.
I mean,
chain.
Matt
or the
LaFleur
Woody chain.
Matt LaFleur had success with Vrabel, so why couldn't Mike, you know?
Yep, absolutely. Let's hop along to the last thing we were going to touch on today.
Sure.
Dylan, you said at the top or before we came on, you're not as deep into prospects this time of year as you normally are.
Yep.
You have been watching some more. Honestly, I stopped watching Cam Ward. I've been watching him for years now.
Yeah, we really have.
I was sold 2 years ago.
Mhm.
I don't have to watch anymore. I watched a few games this year. I think a few weeks ago when you guys mentioned the UCLA game, I watched that and I was like, that's him. That's the guy. So I don't need to see any more, but you've taken the time to watch a little bit more. What are your thoughts? And from what you've seen so far, is it Shador or Cam? Who's your QB1?
So with the caveat that I haven't done any film on Shador only, I've watched more Colorado this year than I have Miami, simply for the fact of what you said is, like, we've been all over Cam Ward since Incarnate Ward. I mean, like, then he went to Washington State and we really got to watch him a lot. And now obviously with Miami, we're seeing him a ton, but they're 1A and 1B for me. I don't think I can, like, definitively say either way. Like I said, I've known Cam Ward more, so I guess my exposure to him is more to put him above. But I mean, the things I see from Cam Ward, it's not all great. I'll start with that. It's not all great. His decision making, I like most of it. A lot of head scratching throws, but it's outweighed by the playmaking highlights. His Virginia Tech game was pretty bad. His 2 interceptions were bad decisions. He had an easy decision to throw it or to run it for an easy touchdown. And he threw it and it was an incomplete. So, like, just small little things. He did end up bringing them back from 10 points down to Virginia Tech, but his poor decision-making, the 2 turnovers and the incomplete on the pass instead of throwing for or running for the touchdown, got them down 10 points. But then he was able to bring them back. So you like that about him. The one big flaw, and I know it sounds like I don't like him because I'm bringing up his flaws first. I don't know if you've noticed this. I don't love his release. Like, his mechanics are more like sidearm than they are over the top. And I think you need a little bit more over the top in the NFL. Not saying he couldn't succeed, but it looks like every time he throws, especially deep, he, like, does a duck and side throw. And I don't love it. I feel like you can get a lot more out of your mechanics that way. And, like, that could be the difference of, like, a 5, 7, 10-yard max throw in the NFL. You know what I mean? If you can figure out your mechanics the right way. Obviously, you can work all summer on your mechanics, and then your first live throw is exactly the same way that it was all the 27 years he's played whatever football. But so the good things about him, the presence in the pocket and escapability. I think he navigates the pocket well. He can escape when he needs to. Always keeps his eyes downfield. That's why he threw the incomplete instead of rushing for the touchdown, because he was looking to make the play downfield, which you have to give him credit for that, but at the same time, you got to know when to run. Like I said, he makes the highlight plays more so than the head scratching plays. The passes that he drops in the bucket, I think I'm not saying Restrepo was a bad wide receiver, but I don't think he was talked about at all until Cam Ward started throwing in the ball. Now, all of a sudden, it's like Restrepo is that guy. And that's not to say Restrepo.
Actually, Dylan, I have to correct you. If you look at the wide receivers to watch in 2024 from the Jets Picks account, you will see Xavier Restrepo.
Oh, shoot. Somebody was on it? Yeah.
The preseason receivers to watch list. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Jets
no, shout out to you. I don't know who the quarterback was before Cam Ward. Maybe he was slightly better than I'm giving him credit for, but I don't think Restrepo, now he's going to the Senior Bowl, and I think Cam Ward is also. So, now you're seeing a lot of Miami guys going to the Senior Bowl too, so it's going to be fun to watch that. But the mobility, like I said, is fun. He can get out of the pocket, but he can also use his mobility to be a really good runner. Body size is more like Anthony Richardson, Cam Newton, Josh Allen. I'm not saying he plays like those guys. I'm saying his body comp. I haven't really gotten down to a film comp yet because I feel like I've only been doing this for 5 years. So there's only a handful of quarterbacks that I feel like you can comp a guy to. And I don't want to comp a guy to somebody that I've never watched on film. I think that's unfair. So body style, I think he's like the Josh Allen, Anthony Richardsons, but good and bad on his film. Good and bad on his film for sure.
Yeah, which, as we always say, you're going to find, there is no perfect prospect, right? Even last year when I, watching Caleb Williams with all the hype, and I get all the hype, I see all the talent, but there were a lot of times where he spent so much time running around waiting for someone to get open.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought to myself, that's not going to. I mean, from time to time it'll work. He's athletic enough; he'll make plays with his legs,
yeah.
But I haven't watched a ton of him this year, but from what I've watched, I've seen plays where it's like running around.
And more often than not, it's not working.
Exactly. It's sort of how he made his living in college. In the pros, you'll make plays from time to time, but not nearly as often. So again, even for a guy that everyone sort of universally agreed was a top quarterback, I said Drake May was my QB1 going into the year. I think I wavered a little and eventually said Caleb, but I really think that also had a lot to do with sort of just the public. Like, that's all you're hearing, QB1. And I was like, yeah, he's QB1. But then when I watched them, there wasn't a big gap between them, no matter who was the one, who was the two. So even a guy that you think that highly of, or that I thought that highly of, you do see some flaws in their game. So as they say, no perfect prospects, right? But I've been keeping up with the Reese's Senior Bowl account with their draft prospects and who's accepting and who's not. I apparently missed a ton. I missed
all of today's.
Yeah, I went. Well, yeah, but I went to the full list today, and there's a lot more guys on here than I realized.
I've been trying to keep up every day based on their Twitter account, and I don't know if the website shows more names than the Twitter account actually shows, because the Twitter account only shows like the publicly accepted invites, and players could accept privately, and they just haven't posted it yet.
Right.
But I've tried to start compiling the list. I missed all of today's names, but I wanted to ask you about defensive linemen when you were done with your point.
I was just going to honestly scroll through and just pick out the names that jump out. Basically, guys that I'm excited to see, who I've been watching for a couple of years.
Okay. Well, then let me ask you this. And what on the defensive line? Because for me, depending on where we end in the draft, if we're in anywhere from like the 7 to 12 range, I think we're going to be sitting here talking about defensive line or trade back, truthfully.
Right.
So of the defensive line prospects at the Senior Bowl, and I can list off a couple if you want, is there any that stick out to you? We have Shamar Turner from Texas A&M. We have Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee, Cam Jackson from Florida, and Jordan Birch from Oregon. Those are some of the bigger name schools that I see on the Senior Bowl list. Any of those catch your eye?
Jordan Birch is a guy that I've liked for a couple of years now.
Okay.
Really good player. I think if I'm the Jets, I'm looking more toward a bigger inside guy, not so much Senior Bowl guy, but Mason Graham is the guy that I would take at this point, right as of right now, if I'm in the top 10. Now, look, if you're in the top 2 or 3, you're taking a quarterback. But
yeah,
I don't know if you saw the old Patriot quarterback, the Alabama kid, is starting for Jacksonville now with Trevor Lawrence out.
Oh, Mac Jones.
Yeah, the dude who tries to twist people's ankles when they're picking up his fumbles.
Yeah.
So that could be a Jets win. Miami
Twice.
As long as Tua's healthy, I think Miami wins both those games.
Then we got Buffalo.
But like you got a chance against Buffalo if they're resting starters.
Yeah. If not, we're getting boat race because they've beat Kansas City already, and they only have 2 losses. So if Kansas City loses again, then Buffalo's in the top spot. So they're gonna probably keep playing until probably Kansas City clinches that top seed because they've already clinched the division. They clinched with 9 wins. Just absolute joke.
That's kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there are some guys. Aeneas Peebles from Virginia Tech. Haven't watched a lot of him this year, but I have in previous years, and I liked him. Okay. So there are some good players. Like I said, Michigan's got a couple of tackles I would take, but Graham would be my top choice on the interior D line.
Yeah, I agree too. If we ended up where we are at like 6 or 7, Mason Graham would probably be top of my list without doing any film on him, just based off what I've seen. What is it, 2 or 3 years now at Michigan?
Yeah. 3, I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's 3, yeah. Or two and a chunk or something like that.
Yeah.
Because he was like with Mozzie Smith, I believe, or like right after the Mozzie Smiths of the world.
Yeah. And one of the names that jumped out at me today that I was really excited. Again, it's something about these guys, some of these guys that you've been watching for several years,
Mm-hmm.
Colin Oliver is an linebacker, edge rusher out of Oklahoma State. And just watching him a couple years ago, and I've said this before. Sometimes I think we overcomplicate, player evaluation to some degree. And the example I always use now is Ivan Pace. What a good player he was, and without even looking at, without even drilling down and really digging into the film, there's the fact that every time I watched Cincinnati, he was making plays. And it's like, okay, there's something to this. This doesn't just. But in fairness, there's no magic bullet. There's no magic formula. Guys who do this for a living and get paid millions of dollars screw up at rates sometimes higher than we do, and we certainly screw up. I remember years ago.
No,
I don't know.
We're flawless, Glenn.
Eric Stryker, the kid from Oklahoma, who was sort of like a man without a position. But that dude lived in opposing backfields. He was sort of like Ivan Pace. And I thought, this guy, he's going to be something else. And I say this all the time. We all like a little confirmation bias. We all like finding a respected voice in the industry who agrees with something we say. And I'm all over Eric Stryker. I'm tweeting about him. I'm watching him constantly. And then I find an article, I think it was a Todd McShay article in Sports Illustrated, saying, like, using his name in the same sentence as Von Miller. And I'm like, all right, I'm on to something here. This kid really is good. I haven't heard anyone talk, blah, 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 blah. He goes undrafted and he's out of the league in a year or 2.
Oh, shit.
Last I looked, he was like, I think he was back at Oklahoma as a coach, actually. I think he spent a couple of years in the CFL, didn't do anything here, and ended up, he was actually, you probably remember the video. He was the guy who was, and it was a very sad video, like crying and apologizing to his family at his draft party for not getting drafted because he had his whole family over his house.
I don't remember that. That's crazy, though.
That went
I would
viral.
Feel bad
that was
too.
Like, that was on ESPN. That was viral. And the Bills signed him as an undrafted free agent. I thought maybe Rex would get something out of him. I don't think he lasted a season.
Wow.
But he was same thing, and I thought that as I was saying the stuff about Ivan Pace, because that's what it reminded me of. I was like, this guy's in the backfield as often as Eric Stryker was. Now, Pace probably a little thicker, a little more well-built. That was actually the year I went to the Combine, and we had the press got a chance to speak with Mike Mayock after, and that was the player I asked him about. I said, what do you think of Eric Stryker? And he said, well, he's kind of a guy without a position. Like, he does a lot of things well, but the question is, where do you play him? And obviously, nobody figured that. But anyway, I digress.
No, that's
just saying. It's an oversimplification that sometimes you just find guys who make plays, but that doesn't always turn out to be the case.
I had a question about a running back at the Senior Bowl. I don't know if you've watched a ton of him, but I don't even remember who they were playing, but it was on TV, and I just happened to watch, and he went off for like 3 or 4 touchdowns. I'm trying to find his stats. Bashal Tutin from Virginia Tech. Yeah.
I haven't watched.
New Jersey kid, by the way.
What's that?
New Jersey kid, by the way, went to Paulsboro.
Let me see. Let me see if I have anything on him.
Okay. I'm trying to find his stats as I talk about it.
Let's see.
Because there was a game here, he was just going off, and I remember maybe it was Gus Johnson. I just remember there goes Tootin'. Like he just kept saying it, and it was making me laugh. But the guy was he was balling.
Let's see if I
there it is. Boston College. Yeah, he had 3 touchdowns, 18 carries, 266 yards, and 3 touchdowns against Boston College in October, and he had a receiving touchdown on his only catch. So
yeah. Unfortunately, don't have anything on him. I thought I did. The running back I'm most interested in seeing. I mean, R.J. Harvey from Central Florida, who I think we talked about when he accepted.
Mullings too from Michigan, right?
Yep, Khalil Mullings, really good player. But Jarquez Hunter, I think of the group we see right now, I think he'll be the fastest in the group. I think he's added a little bit of size since I first started watching him at Auburn. I think pretty sure he played with Bo Nix. Like that's around the first time I saw him.
I mean, Bo Nix was in the college football realms for 6 years. So
I'm trying. I gotta find his. I could be wrong about that, but I'm 99% sure he played. But he's excuse me, his speed. I think he'll test better than most running backs. At the combine. Let's see.
You highlighted was it a wide receiver or a tight end that got accepted today? I think it was a TCU guy.
TCU.
Was that you on Twitter?
I'm trying to think. There was because I watched. Yes, sorry, because I watched TCU last night. And there's a couple of guys I really like with them, but yeah, Savion Williams.
That's it. Yeah.
I was gonna look up. Let's see. When was Bo Nix's last year at Auburn? Because
did he play 2 years at Oregon or just 1?
I thought it was 2.
So then it would
anyway, Hunter's been there since 2021.
So that was they probably overlapped for 1 year.
And he averaged
2023 Oregon. Yeah.
Yeah, he averaged 6.7 a carry that year, 6.4 in year 2, 5.7 year 3, and 6.4 in year 4. The dude can flat out fly, can catch the ball out of the backfield. But Savion Williams, yeah, he's a guy. Another one I first noticed a couple years ago. Really good size, 6'3". Was a little thinner back then. He may have added a little bit of weight. And
he looked pretty big on his picture that the Senior Bowl posted him in.
Yeah, I want to check and see if they did it, because I don't remember it in previous years, but in the couple TCU games I've watched this year, they're using him a lot out of the backfield as taking direct snaps, using him on, trick gadget run plays, and he's making plays out of the backfield as a runner. So I'm kind of looking at him like, is he a guy at the next level who you can use in various roles? I don't know. I think his lack of production, maybe just because of a lack of good quarterback play.
Yeah,
because that's been pretty bad.
That is a real thing in college. People don't understand that. And I remember putting that in a scouting report. And the reason I'm using this example is because he's playing right now. But Jaden Reed at Michigan State, one of the first things I wrote was piss poor quarterback play. Like the guy couldn't make a throw to the field. If he was on the left hash and Jaden Reed was lined up on the right slot running an outside fade, the guy couldn't hit him. He was that bad. And then he goes to the Senior Bowl and he's turning heads. And he's like, oh, wow, with a quarterback who could put the ball where it needs to go, he's something. So, that's always interesting to watch, because if he's on the radar with bad quarterback play, and like you said, they're using him backfield, wildcat, directional snap, cool gadget, stuff like that to mitigate the quarterback play, that just goes to show his football intelligence overall.
Here's some Savion Williams for you.
Big dig route like that.
Yep, leaping grab, fingertip grab up here. Oh, no, sorry, it's the guy above that.
Yep. Looks like a little dagger concept up at the top. Whoa. Oh, Glenn just left the whole thing. I wonder if his internet dropped off again. Uh-oh. Here he is. Oh. No. Good? You killed everything once you dropped the Savion Williams clip.
Yeah, I got to show you this guy, though. I can't remember if I told you about this guy. His teammate. He was actually the reason I put on the TCU game yesterday, because I've not really seen him much from him this year. Let's see. John Paul Richardson, who is another TCU product. He was Oklahoma State.
Not a Senior Bowl guy, just a TCU guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
But is it? Hang on one second. It's not. I'll have to next show. I'll do it. He's not. I know I have a ton of his highlights because this dude just one play after another. As a wide receiver, like I said, first noticed him at Oklahoma State, but he was some of the best hands in the country, easily. Good return man, good after the catch. Yeah, I got to find that. I know I have some stuff on him, but there's none there right now.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, so just a couple more Senior Bowl names. Brew McCoy, Tennessee. Mentioned him last year. Liked him a couple years ago, but then he got injured and missed a bunch of time. But just big-bodied guy, good size speed combo, really productive there. And Gavin Bartholomew. I mean, the tight end is if you need a tight end this year, or this is the year to need a tight end, just like a couple seasons ago when there were a bunch of good ones. There's a bunch of good ones in this class. Gavin Bartholomew is one of them. I think really a lot of the tight ends are probably going to be really good prospects.
Yeah, I like the Miami guy just because I've seen enough of him watching Cam Ward, Elijah Arroyo. I like him.
Yeah, he's going to be there. Is he? I don't know if he's the guy. I'd be surprised if he wins. They have a tight end at Miami who's been there. He's on like his 6th or 7th year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know if that's him.
I think who's their other tight end? I can't remember the name of him.
Let's see.
But they got a lot of weapons.
Yeah, it's not Arroyo. Arroyo's been there. This is his 4th year.
Yeah.
But yeah, either way, some interesting prospects added already. More to come. Obviously, I'm very unlikely going to Mobile unless something insane happens.
Yeah, I was just able to book my stuff yesterday. Freaking
yeah, I thought about
a lot of money later. We're going to Mobile.
Yeah, I'm thinking about doing the whole book now, pay later, like book it now, and if I can't go, just cancel it. But,
okay, yeah.
We'll see what happens with that. But
well,
more to come, more
you got a place to stay and a rental car if you do.
Yeah, I will. I'm gonna do everything I can to get out there. So we'll see how it goes, but we'll wrap this one up for now. Just under an hour and 20, and we'll be back next week. Hopefully some more good performances from these kids. Where are you at, Dylan? Do you want wins? Do you want it to tank? Do you want the QB? Years past, I've been like, you always got to root for wins, and then they miss out, and it's like,
yeah. I'm okay if we lose. I get myself really excited during the games. Like
that's
you saw
the thing.
Me,
it's during the games I have a hard time rooting against them.
I was like, this is fun, guys. Like this is what I'm talking about. Complementary football. The offense was playing well, the defense was playing well, special teams, and then the last 45 minutes happened and there was no football played. So it's like if games were only 15 minutes long, the Jets would be a really exciting team. But no, I mean, if we lose, we lose. I'm not team tank fully, but at the same time, I want to get a top 4 pick because then if we're not necessarily 1 or 2, maybe the Jaguars don't take a quarterback like I think you took in your mock draft with Dom C over on his channel. I don't think you took a quarterback at 1. So if they don't, then you're right in the spot for one of the top 2 guys. You could trade up a pick or 2. I'm not opposed to that scenario also. So I'm kind of take it or leave it with these last 5, but just show me something from the foundational guys.
Yeah, that's the perfect world scenario is that Sauce, Garrett, Olu, all those guys you're building around that they continue to play at that level. And then you can feel, you have something to feel good about. I don't think wins carry over in the NFL. Guys talk about that. How many times have we seen, they won 3 out of 4 down the stretch, killed their draft position, and they sucked again the next year.
In 2019, we ended the season, 6-1 to finish 7-8, and then we went 0-13 to start the next season. So it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't carry over.
Losses probably carry over more than
too much change in an off season.
I would say losses carry over. Like if you lose your last 6, that's hard on a team to come back from. So you got to win at least 1. Just win 1.
Yeah, maybe try not to lose out.
Yeah, losing out would probably suck.
Yeah, yes, I agree. All right, that'll wrap this one up, Jets fans. Have a good one.